So, Kate, what have we got coming up on today's show?
Robert, we have our final episode of the deep dive into the special relationship with the wonderful Julie, Countess of Sandwich, and we're talking this time about the 20th century.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Queens, Kings and Dastardly Things. I am Robert Hardman, Daily Mail columnist and royal biographer, and a little bit out of my depth today. I'm completely outnumbered because I'm the only person here without a title. I'm joined, as ever, by my colleague, Professor Kate Williams. Kate, royal biographer, historian. Hello.
Hello, Robert.
I'm also joined by Julie Montague, Countess of Sandwich, who's also a historian. Julie, hello.
Hello. Thank you both for having me.
And we are on our third and final study of the special relationship. We're marking 250 years of the USA. And it all, of course, came out of that great divorce back in 1776 when America said, no thanks, George III, went its own way and really changed the shape of everything forevermore. But it's been an extraordinary journey. And that's why we're so delighted to have Julie with us, because Julie, as well as being the Countess of Sandwich and therefore related to the Earl of Sandwich, who played a pretty key role in that War of Independence. But Julie, you are emblematic of the special relationship yourself because you are an American who has married into a great British family. In a nutshell, how did it happen?
I didn't, unfortunately, I am an American, but I am not an heiress. So there you go. Came over here, met my husband. The story goes, and this is the truth. He introduced himself as Luke Montague. 3 months into the relationship, he pays for something. And I look at him and I say, why does your credit card say Viscount Hinchingbrook? And he looked at me in horror and said, it's not Viscount, it's Viscount. And of course, I then immediately had to say, but why would it be Viscount? It's spelled exactly like discount. True story.
Tomato.
I know.
It is.
And then he
like
said,
discount.
I'm going to marry her. She's a breath of fresh air.
Oh, and the happily ever after.
Well, it's great to have you here because you can shed some proper star-spangled light on what we're about to discuss. Because in our last episode, let's read back. 2 episodes ago, we did the whole War of Independence, how the US got rid of George III. Our last episode, we looked at how our two countries really parted the ways. There were some pretty vicious moments, not least burning down the White House, some very awkward moments, not least the American Civil War. By the end of it, we got onto the Gilded Age, and that moment, really, when that sort of rapprochement, when Britain and the US are starting to intermarry. These great American fortunes are coming over to Britain, Brits are coming over to America, and now we've got to the start of the 20th century, and we're really going to look at the creation of the special relationship as we know it today. And I know there'll be listeners out there who will say, well, hang on, why aren't you talking about all the other people who crossed the Atlantic and whatever? I mean, the clue is in the title of this podcast, Queens, Kings and Dastardly Things. We tend to kind of look at more the royal side of it, so with all due respect to all those people who have all sorts of amazing family stories and Statue of Liberty and how they came to America and made huge things and great fortunes and whatever. We're going to keep it kind of royal. So, Kate, if I could start with you, just give us a flavour of the Edwardian era. What was it all about, and why did America appeal to naughty old Edward VII?
The Edwardian era is post-Victorian celebration. It's parties, it's glamour, it's poverty and suffering for a large swathe of the population in Britain and also in the Empire. But for the aristocracy, this is their time to enjoy themselves and have fun. And also the old notions of hierarchy are collapsing, and what's more important is money. And who's got money? It is the Americans. They've got money, they've got sass, they've got know-how, they cut through a lot of the sort of hierarchical stuffiness, and they have these incredible innovations. We talked a little bit about this in episode 2. They have things like central heating. People are totally obsessed by Americans.
They have just sort of invented flying, haven't they, around about this sort of time? That's a fairly major innovation.
Magical. I mean, they are obsessed by Americans in the Edwardian period, aren't they, Julie?
Absolutely. And, travel was easier as well. I mean, you mentioned, of course, flying, but we've got the steamships, right? So it's a lot easier for these two countries to connect with one another. You've got the start of this American social obsession, if you like, with Edward VII. Yes, he married a beauty. I mean, Queen Alexandra, absolutely gorgeous, fashion icon, jewelry, dripping, tiaras, her chokers, absolutely extraordinary. But yet he likes a little bit of fun. And that fun are these Americans. They're humorous, they're lighthearted, they don't have that stiff upper lip, they're less stuffy.
Unshockable.
Sorry about that. And he's surrounding himself by these fun Americans, and very opposite to his mother, let's remember, who, after the death, of course, Albert, dressed in black, became a recluse, didn't really see much of her, but yet he is out there. It's the Marlborough set. They're having these huge house parties, and the Americans are invited.
Yeah, everybody loves
and
the
the
Marlborough
idea
House,
is, isn't it, that they buy Edward Sandringham so it'll be nice and quiet and take him out of this party world, and he takes the party to Sandringham, and there were these incredibly glamorous women. He uses these grand hostesses and plenty of mistresses because Edward likes a married lady. So really what we're saying in general is that the king, his favourite type of lady, is a glamorous, married American lady.
Absolutely. And a lot of fun.
And just to bring it back to the boring old humdrum world of wars and politics, at the same time, you do have sort of alliances forming here. That there's an understanding that the Anglosphere, if you like, the English-speaking world, is starting to pull together. So the USA stays out of the Boer War, for example, leaves Britain to sort of get on with that. Britain stays out of the Spanish-American War, but nonetheless sort of gives America a kind of helping hand as America sort of starts to take control of like the Philippines and large parts of the Pacific. There's that sense of here is a mighty alliance. And I think that really comes to the fore as we hit the First World War. It's a ghastly war. Britain is losing its young man hand over fist. 1917, in come America to the rescue, in a sense. And that's a real turning point in the war. I think that brings those countries together. And at the end of that war, we get that historic moment when the first time a US president comes to Buckingham Palace. Woodrow Wilson comes to meet George V. That's the real start. That's when monarchs and presidents actually meet face to face. And Julie, that's going to really set the tone for the special relationship in the 20th century, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's where this special relationship really roots itself. So prior to the First World War, you can look at this special relationship as more social and financial, but now you're looking at the president coming over, meeting, of course, the monarchy, and it's becoming a little bit more political, right? These are two countries arm in arm together, and making sure, again, with that visit, that the world can see that it's perceived that way.
And Wilson being at the Treaty of Versailles, being at the construction of what will be post-war Europe as they think, it's so important now that America has a role. And just as you were saying, Julie, the American dominance is now becoming a cultural one, isn't it? In the 1920s, it is all about American culture. It's the jazz age, it's American fashions, it's American glamour and American cinema. And so the average working class girl in Britain now wants to be just like an American girl.
Yeah, we've got Hollywood taking off, really, the start of Hollywood. And I think it's, again, looking at America as this new country that's just now kind of showing its face, its creativity, its entrepreneurship, its ambition. And that's rubbing off a little bit here in Britain.
Even after the Great Depression, this cultural dominance of America continues really right up until the 1930s when who comes? That very significant American. It's Mrs. Wallace Simpson.
Yeah, that is when America sends another export over that is going to have huge ramifications for the royal family. Julie, in a nutshell, just tell us about Wallace Simpson. Who was she, and why did Edward get so obsessed with her?
I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary if you kind of break down Wallace little by little. But, she didn't come from necessarily wealth, okay? So she wasn't really considered sort of upper class in America, right? But she had that American drive and go-get-'em attitude, and she was very socially ambitious. So married once, didn't work out, divorce, right? Because American divorce was okay, much more okay to be divorced in America at that time than it was over here. Right here, it was still very much taboo.
Weren't invited to all of the functions, the social functions were excluded. But an American divorcee was in quite a different situation.
Absolutely, because then she gets married again and divorces again.
Second time around, it's to Mr. Simpson.
Exactly. So she still
Ernest Simpson.
Ernest Simpson, yeah.
She's married to him when she first meets Edward, the Prince of Wales, isn't she?
because she worked very hard with, again, that marriage to get up into that social ranking. So she was then surrounded by the right people over here.
And Thelma Furness becomes such a good friend to her, doesn't she? I love the story, isn't
Thelma
it?
Furness, she's Viscountess Furness, and she is in that set. I mean, rewind slightly. I think the first meeting between Edward and Wallace, it's at a house party in Leicestershire, and they actually, I think their first conversation is on the subject of central heating.
We were discussing
that
central
great American
heating.
innovation.
Fascinated by central heating. She's glamorous, she's gorgeous, but it seems to be that he rather did. She's not number one in his affections. And then Thelma Furness pops back to America.
Thelma Furness being his mistress.
His mistress,
yeah.
pops back to one of the many, pops back to America to look at her estates and asks Wallace to keep him amused.
Yes.
And then what happens?
Keep an eye
Julie?
on my boyfriend, the Prince of Wales. Don't do anything naughty. Just keep an eye
Just
on
keep an
him.
eye.
I'll be back soon.
And then what
Yeah.
happens, Julie?
And then what happens is, of course, this relationship starts to form. All of a sudden, he finds this warm, lighthearted, fun. You know, when I look at Wallace as far as looks, I wouldn't say she's necessarily gorgeous, but she's chiseled, right? And she's confident. She exudes self-confidence, and he wants that. And he's very attracted to her personality.
So much so that even though I think she doesn't automatically expect it's going to be a long-term relationship, he's so fascinated by her that he insists on marrying her. I think that it doesn't seem, does it, Julie, as if she thought it was a sort of casual relationship. She'd just get a few jewels and go to a few parties, and that would be the end of that.
Right. Wallace was actually very content in staying his mistress. I mean, we know that she wrote to him saying, I do not want you to abdicate. Do not do this for me. We can survive together as a couple without you having to do this. But he was determined. He wanted to marry the love of his life.
Make her Empress of India and the whole bag of tricks, as he put it. She was queen or nothing, so he abdicated famously on the 10th of December 1936, and it's often blamed on her. And as you say, Julie, it was totally his decision. The king wanted out.
Well, there is that theory that actually she was his way of getting out, that he, as he said to Tommy Lascelles way back in 1928, I'm totally unsuited to being Prince of Wales. I mean, there were those moments where he just thought the whole idea of being king was just too much like hard work. I mean, he was a fabulously selfish man. And it probably didn't really occur to him what he was losing until he'd lost it. By then it was too late. But as you say, then off they went. They marry in France. Just a matter of weeks after younger brother George VI has that coronation. The coronation that's been fixed for Edward VIII doesn't happen. Take his name off the invitations. He's gone.
Mugs were made. I think I even
Mugs
have
were
one of those
made.
mugs.
Mugs were
Oh,
made.
collector's item or
Beer
what?
was made, many things were made, and
So there George VI is on the throne. Weeks later, Edward marries Wallace. None of the royal family attend at all.
And Julie, what do you think that the abdication, them in exile, does to that American glamorous society, which has been so much part of the London elite? Does it now start to crumble as we see George VI on the throne in his very different style?
I think that for many, there's blame put on Wallace. And in one sense, that's quite sad, because if we look at the modern royal family today, you could say she almost paved the way for Charles to marry Camilla, divorced, for Harry to marry Meghan, divorced, right? But I think you're right, though, Kate. Also, looking at that, that's when this relationship, I think, as far as the Americans coming over and sort of saving the country house or being the glamorous American fun-loving, it started to sour.
And of course, no sooner do we have the reign of George VI than the clouds are gathering over Europe, over the world. It's the age of the dictators. War is clearly coming. You've got the abdicated king, ex-king Edward VIII, actually going out with Wallace to meet Hitler, to sort of almost legitimize Nazi Germany. Britain is thinking, no, we've got to sort out, we've got to build our alliances. The first state visit that George and Elizabeth go on, they go to Paris. It's a great success. Get the French on the side. The next one, the really key one, 1939, off they go to the USA. They go to Canada as well. Canada, a crucial realm. I mean, that's very important. But they go to the White House. It's the first time that a reigning monarch has set foot in the White House. And Julie, that again, that's another one of those sort of key landmark moments in the story of the special relationship, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely extraordinary. It's not the prime minister coming over. It's the royal family. You know, it's the king and the queen to the White House. Again, it's solidifying. It was rooted in the First World War, and now we're starting to see it progress. And, that's a truly historical moment for, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth to come over to Washington.
The king and queen were really excited and were writing letters home and even ringing home to their daughters with all these exciting moments on the trip. Like the first time a royal had ever been served a hot dog. Remember, there's that letter in the Royal Archives. So the Queen underlines, puts in capital letters, "We ate something called a hot dog!"
Oh my goodness.
And everyone was terribly excited. The Princess Elizabeth, Princess Margaret wanted to hear all about this extraordinary sort of American cuisine that Mum and Dad are being treated to, and it's really sweet. But that's at the personal level. The crucial level is that there's been a worry that George VI and Queen Elizabeth, they're a bit boring, they're not very glamorous, whereas Edward and Wallis were very glamorous. Suddenly, I think America sees that here's a dutiful, wholesome, reliable, dependable couple on the throne, and actually they're a good thing. And at the end of that trip, George VI does say to his private secretary that tour has made us, and it has, I think, established them as a reigning pair, if you like, and only just in time, because it's literally a matter of weeks before the Second World War starts. Second World War starts, and obviously we've got that head start in our relationship with America because the King and Queen have been out there, but still America's neutral, and Kate, that's a problem, isn't it?
As the war continues and is more and more of a stalemate, it seems very clear that what they need is the Americans to come in, and they need American money, they need American troops, they need American support.
The one problem we had, or the main problem we had, was at the beginning of the war, the American ambassador to the UK was Joe Kennedy, who was very anti-America joining the war, who was constantly reporting back that Britain's it's a busted flush.
Joe Kennedy, quite right mentioning him, the start of the Kennedy dynasty, very much saying, no, we do not want to get involved with this. This has nothing to do with us. We'll support you where we can, but we're not going to get involved. And then, of
We're
course,
not going to lose American men. We're not going to see our young men dying for European conflict.
At which point Britain then starts to wheel out every secret weapon it can, including a certain Princess Elizabeth, because there you are in October 1940. It's the height of the Blitz. It's the Battle of Britain. Britain really is seriously looking at the possibility of invasion by the enemy. And that is when Elizabeth and Margaret are called upon to do their very first broadcast, and they do that very sweet broadcast. It's normally on Children's Hour on the BBC, and they're addressing evacuated children around Britain and indeed around the world, and it's basically a sort of morale booster. And there you've got Princess Elizabeth, aged 14. And she's delivering the first speech of what's going to be an entire lifetime of broadcasting. I think you can safely say she's probably the longest broadcaster in history. But that's her very, very first broadcast. As I said, it's the height of the Battle of Britain. And she is saying, at the end of the day, all is going to be well, I assure you. And then at the end of it, there's that very sweet moment where she says, "Come along, Margaret, let's say goodnight." And that phrase, "come along, Margaret," it just catches. It goes. It's the equivalent of sort of going viral in its day. Everyone's saying, "Come along, Margaret." But where does this resonate in particular? It's in the United States. In the United States, that speech is brought out as a record. It's actually put on vinyl and sold in the shops, and it's a hit.
It's fascinating to see that Margaret and Elizabeth went viral, but we also have to remember that even though America is its own separate country, they declare their independence, we still have this slight obsession and attachment to Britain. Again, it's the older parent, right? So yes, we're this young country, but we still need to have that.
That was your comparison in episode 1, wasn't it? That we were the abusive parent, but you still can't stop loving your parents.
You still have that connection, and that shows you right there that sort of record that went viral, it landed with people.
those darkest days of the Second World War, you've got a young princess watching her father facing at any minute a kind of Romanov-style firing squad. I mean, the whole family could have been taken out and shot if there'd been an invasion. And she's growing up in the war, seeing her father at this moment, and then in comes America. And they are like the U.S. cavalry to the rescue. And she loves, I mean, she already loves Hollywood. You read the King's War Diaries. I've been allowed to read them. They're in the Tower at Windsor. And there are constant references. In the darkest days, the thing that cheers them all up is they're going to have a Disney screening. I mean, on her 14th birthday, I think it is, Elizabeth gets to see Pinocchio. 16th birthday, she's watching Dumbo. There are these sort of escapist moments. And then America, it's glamour, it's salvation.
They do actually have some GIs around Windsor, don't they? Because she says, she and Margaret make this joke that the GIs, the American GIs, who are so well received in the UK, they're also in Windsor. And some of them say, I've got a daughter just like you. And they give Elizabeth and Margaret chocolates because they have these chocolates. So just like so many children across the UK are just fascinated by these glamorous American soldiers who have these often really exciting products with them.
Yes.
It's the same for the two princesses.
Yeah, and these GIs that you mention, they have big smiles.
Better teeth.
Yeah, better. Yeah, exactly. But it's the big smile. They're still huge smiles, just saying we're coming to help. Yeah, and we all know that as human beings, when we're helping somebody else, it gives you great pleasure.
American intervention in the war is absolutely vital, totally integral. The war is over, and then the peace in the 50s. I mean, the world of the 50s is an American world.
Yeah.
It is the American consumer culture, isn't it?
Gosh, I mean, I know that I said earlier in the previous episode that if I could go back in time, it might be during that Gilded Age, but the other decade would definitely be the 1950s.
Oh, yes.
Not in Britain, it wouldn't. It was ration books, bomb sites.
Yeah.
I mean, we did have the coronation. That cheered everybody up. But the start of the 50s, you're right. The America just seemed, it was just representative of everybody's dreams and aspirations.
The motor car.
I mean, it was,
the
we would talk
house,
about the
the
American
airplane.
dream, but I mean, that really was when everybody had it. And one person who also had it was, going back to the royals, Princess Elizabeth in those drab years immediately after the war. The most exciting thing in Britain was the production of Oklahoma on the West End stage. And she and Margaret loved it so much. They went to see it dozens of times. And there's that song from it, People Will Say We're in Love, and that became her... It was her song. It was the song that she and Prince Philip. It was there for the rest of their life. That was their song.
Extraordinary. But I mean, the difference between post-war Britain and post-war United States is quite stark in the sense that America was never, apart from Pearl Harbor, America wasn't, the continent itself wasn't bombed. An island was. Their homes weren't requisitioned, right? And so life could sort of carry on as normal. Very different over here in the 50s.
And you really do see the falling back of Britain in terms of industrial strength during the 50s and this powerhouse of America in terms of making everything from motor cars to all the possible consumer goods.
Well, there is still one blip in the special relationship to come, a fairly substantial one, and it is in that period. It's in the mid-50s, and Britain is this declining power. And there is this great shock to the system when the Suez Canal, which is a sort of great French-British construction from the 19th century, has been effectively seized by an Egyptian coup. By General Nasser. This is somewhere that Britain rather felt that it owned, and suddenly it didn't own it anymore. And the Egyptians have said, we're not listening to you anymore. We're going to seize this canal. It's on our doorstep. So Britain concocts this totally phony exercise with France and Israel, which is that Israel will invade a bit of Egypt, cause a war, and France and Britain will come in to take control of the canal, and it's forever after known as Suez. It's a disaster. It's been badly thought through. The British Prime Minister, Anthony Eden, has not told the Americans anything about it. America suddenly finds out about this crackpot scheme and says, no way, not having this. And so Britain has to retreat. By this time, America really does think Britain's a busted. Britain's over now. Yeah, they won the war, but they're nearly bankrupt. They've had this absolutely rinky-dink, stupid attempt to seize the Suez Canal. They've lied to everybody. And we're going to put them in the doghouse. So who is it who Britain sends to patch things up?
Of course, the family that Americans are, slightly obsessed with, the royal family.
That's it. 1957, the Queen goes over on her first state visit to the US. And I think it is a moment where that visit to her, but also to Britain, she's suddenly exposed to all these things she's never seen before. She goes to a supermarket for the first time. She goes to a baseball match. She sort of sees sort of TV in its sort of, in its richness. I mean, TV in Britain at this point is a pretty basic, it's one channel. And everything about the US is big and it works and it's just fabulous.
And maybe she even managed to get a hot dog, Robert, after hearing so much about these magical foodstuffs. And I love that story that when she was there, she found her dress was covered in these splinters of glass. And that was because there were so many photographers taking pictures. And of course, the flashbulbs exploded and broke as they took their pictures. And this was such a new experience for her.
And the end of that trip, I think it is, as Harold Macmillan, the then British Prime Minister, said, she's buried George III for good and all. There was a sort of sense that, okay, things are okay again. And I really do think at that point that we not quite draw a line, because there are still a few more blips, in the relationship, like there are in any happy marriage. There are always a few problems. One could look ahead and say, well, what about Vietnam? What about the US invasion of Grenada in 1984? But really from that point on, I think we are at on a set fare on what we could call the special relationship. It's a relationship that continues to this day. Of course, there are political tensions and all the rest, but frankly, if Britain's in a crisis, who are we going to call first? We're going to call Washington. I would like to think that even though we're a fairly diminished country in a crisis, Washington would probably still want to call London pretty much before most other countries.
Julie, we've been so grateful to have you. And yes, you are managing this fantastic estate, Mapperton. I'm often gripped by your Instagram stories of the things you do to the estate, particularly that one, I think a year or so ago, where you found this hole in the ground and created it into an entire swimming pool.
I'm so privileged, I know that, to be able to, live in a historic building, but times have definitely changed. 100 years ago, there was a lot more staff. And I think the ladies of the manor, yes, they ran a big household, but they didn't necessarily roll up their sleeves and get a cement mixer,
which you
did.
And cleaned out the swimming pool in about 3 days. I mean, it was.
Doesn't sound very Gilded Age to me.
Oh, no. But Julie had the boiler suit on. It was all fashion.
Much more
all
fun.
Fashion, and you do so much for heritage, Julie, because it's tough keeping a house up. And it's been on Netflix. The Rebecca in Netflix is often on TV. We often see Mapperton on TV. And
it's good. I feel, again, really honored and privileged to be a part of preserving, this part of England's heritage and the home that we live in. But I am, as you know, roll up my sleeves. But times have to move on.
So where can our listeners find you, Julie? They've got their Substack.
Yeah, Substack is Gilded Heiresses, and that's where I write about all things the Gilded Age. And then, of course, my American Countess YouTube channel is where I visit other historic houses who are doing pretty much what I'm doing at our historic house.
And you've had some really good interviewees saying very fascinating things
one
on
of them
there.
Was you.
Yes,
that's
yes,
exactly
very interesting.
Right.
Yes,
I know. It's fantastic having Professor Kate Williams on some of those
and
episodes.
Just for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, just remind us where might they have seen Mapperton? What have you been in as a location?
So we would always like a little bit more, Robert, to be honest. It's wonderful when films come to us. So we were in Rebecca with Lily James.
On Netflix, which was
on
great.
Netflix. And then the big one was Far From the Madding Crowd with Carey Mulligan.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure having you. And maybe as we get closer to the 250th anniversary next summer, on July the 4th, 2026, it's going to be the big one. Maybe we'll have to get you back on again. But for now...
can I just butt in here? I make really good red, white, and blue flag cupcakes. I'll bring them in if you have me on.
Right. Okay, well, that's a booking then. Well, listen, thank you so much. Julie Montague, Countess of Sandwich, thank you. From me, Robert Hardman, it's a goodbye.
And for me, Kate Williams, thank you, Julie. It's been great to have you, and goodbye.